when we were raking in a lot more money, Ace began to shoot home movies. By this time we had taken on a lawyer and business managers who were all Jewish. Ace would invite all of us up to his house for a party and then screen these home videos that he and his pal Bobby made. We'd sit around the TV and, all of a sudden, Ace would walk into the room wearing a full SS uniform complete with red swastika, hat, and a lugger. "You will watch my movie," he'd say, and then he'd show these movies with Ace and his friends in Nazi uniforms torturing other friends who were dressed like the Jewish in a concentration camp. I'd be watching and then I'd look over at our managers and Paul Marshall, our lawyer, and they'd just look appalled. And everybody put up with it. By then he was making so much money for them, what were they going to say? In September of 1975, our lives were forever changed. That was when our live album Alive was finally released. It was a crazy time for us. We had tried and failed 3 times to capture the vibrancy and immediacy of the band on record. We were a huge, sounding heavy metal band on the road, but on the albums we sounded so small. So when Eddie Kramer agreed to come out on tour with 2 trucks to record us, we were ecstatic. There had been financial considerations, too. It was a lot cheaper to record a live album than a new studio one. We were still waiting on our royalty statements from Casablanca. Neil had mortgaged his house to keep his company afloat because he had severed his distribution ties with Warner Brothers Records. Our lawyers had sued Neil for the back royalties, and it was getting ugly. It got so bad that back in New York, Bill was relying on friends who were taking turns to take him out to dinner. Alive would change all that. Although it was crafted to sound like it was recorded in one night at Cobo Hall in Detroit, we actually recorded a bunch of shows. Then Kramer went back to New York and began culling the best performances. Picking out the best drum tracks was the first step. Once you had the drum track, then you could sweeten everything else. If you had to throw on a new lead, you could throw on some bass, add some rhythm guitar, all possible. In the end we wound up keeping only my drum tracks, my vocals, and calls between song raps. Everything else was created in the studio. Recording was a necessity, not any kind of subterfuge. Every band that's ever put out a live album does it. When you record live, there's always leakage, unless you get lucky. Sometimes guitars would go out of tune or you'd sing out of key. I would always go up an octave when I was singing Black Diamond Live because I'd get so excited. Finally, I got to hear one of my drum solos on a record. My solo on 100,000 Years was scary, if I say so myself. It's probably the best drum solo that I've ever done. I used mallets and flangeers to give it a cooler, different, deeper, almost outer space sound. We hit the road as soon as Alive came out. About a month into the tour, we scored one of the greatest publicity coups of all time. It all went back a year in time. In 1974, the Cadillac Vikings, the football team of Cadillac High School in Cadillac, Michigan, lost their first 2 games of the season. The head coach decided to play rock music before the game to pump up the players. The assistant coach, Jim Neff, chose to play our albums. Naturally, the team went on to win 7 straight games. Neff got in touch with Alan Miller, who worked for Bill, and after a year of back and forth, we agreed to make Cadillac a stop on our tour and play the homecoming concert in the school's gym. We couldn't believe our eyes when we got to Cadillac that day. It was like living in his world. Everybody was in our makeup, even the politicians and the people who worked behind the counters at the local McDonald's. We rode on a big float in the homecoming parade down a street that had been renamed Kiss Boulevard. The mayor gave us the key to the city. We took pictures with the football team. During halftime, I got on the football field and played along with the drum corps on rock and roll all night. We had a ball. And we carried along a sizable number of press people who broke it into an international story. Because Bill knew the story had major legs, he lectured us before we left. I had the feeling he was mainly talking to Gene. Be really cool when you're there, he counseled. Don't sleep with the mayor's wife. Don't sleep with his daughter. Stay away from the chief of police's daughter. I still think Gene fucked someone, but he was very discreet. After 2 days, we left on an army helicopter from the stadium and dropped thousands of leaflets on the football field that read "Kiss loves you." Of course, the Vikings won that homecoming game. About a month after Cadillac, we presided over the official inauguration of the Kiss Army, which would become the greatest fan club in rock and roll history. The whole concept for the Kiss Army was formed at the beginning of 1975 when two teenagers from Terre Haute, Indiana, Bill Starkey and Jay Evans, began haranguing the program director of WBTS, a local radio station, to play Kiss music. The program director blew them off again and again, telling them that Kiss was a fag band, until the two kids started sending letters threatening to blow up the station and actually picketed the station, claiming to be representing the Kiss Army. By July, WBTS had added Kiss to its playlist and kept referring to the Kiss Army for requesting it. Somehow Alan Miller, whom we nicknamed Little Bill because he dressed identically to Bill Ahoy, got wind of this, and with his genius flair for publicity decided we should go to Terre Haute and give Starkey, who was the self-proclaimed general of the Kiss Army, a plaque. On stage, he also coordinated pre-show publicity, and Starkey and his pal Evans called into WBTS nightly to hype the show. And thanks to these two kids, we managed to sell out the new 21,000-seat arena, something that even Aerosmith couldn't do. So when we got to Terre Haute, we were treated like visiting dignitaries. The local army base provided a jeep escort for us from the airport to downtown, where they had a huge parade. The Kiss Army meets the UTS Army. Again, Hawkpoint was way ahead of us on this. You're the generals, and your army needs you, he lectured us. You have to go out there and show the kids that you really love them, that you believe in what they believe. From these humble origins, the Kiss Army spread like wildfire, which just goes to show the devotion of our fans. A Kiss Army. Who ever heard of a Led Zeppelin army or a Rolling Stones army? This was some serious adulation. And the timing was right. We had just given them a national anthem with rock and roll all night. We began to close with that song and dropped thousands of pounds of confetti and balloons all over the audience. We had turned our show into a magnificently chaotic party. Soon we couldn't stay at a hotel without the Kiss Army invading it. They would storm the hotel en masse in their homemade costumes and makeup and sit in the lobby and chant song names over and over again. Firehouse. Firehouse. Black Diamond. Black Diamond. Then they'd start chanting our individual names. Of course the hotel management didn't take too kindly to this, and the police were called every night. After a few minutes, the cops would disperse the crowd and the staff would stick us with the cleanup bill. I could feel the tide turning. I remember one night we were opening for Dr. John. We were waiting to go on when Mac, that's his real name, came into our dressing room. He had just gone through a bunch of shit. One of his buses got into a pileup and some of his wardrobe got messed up. Hey, look it, he said in his deep New Orleans patois. You guys don't have to open for me. I'll go on first because I'll tell you what, I ain't an idiot. Those people ain't here to see me. This ain't no blues audience, they got more paint on their faces. So let me get my boys out there now and we'll do our thing. Good luck. And he reversed the order and went on first and then left. He was truly a cool cat. Gene had become the de facto leader of the group because he would do most of the interviews. With his blood spitting and fire eating, he became the visual focal point of the group and was the most photographed. All of us, especially Paul, were beginning to resent Gene's dominance. They even met with Bill about it, and Gene calmly told Paul that Paul should be more assertive, not that Gene should tone anything down. Gene was right, but then Paul began to step in front of Gene routinely on stage. Once he did that, Gene would fade. Paul would steal the spotlight from him like that. As we got more popular, a new monster was created. Paul always had a problem with carving out his own identity. Whatever someone else had, whether it was a car or, ultimately, a house, Paul would buy the same thing for himself. But now that we were drawing bigger audiences and Paul was moving out front more, he became the focal point. He'd get more letters from chicks. More people started wearing his makeup. And it built to a point where he just fell in love with himself. But Paul would never blatantly assert his authority. He was a major game player, a puppet master. He would let Gene verbalize his feelings and desires. Suddenly it became whatever Paul wanted, Paul got it. He was a master at mind games. I guess that's what 4 hours a day of talking to your shrink will do for you. The worst, though, was when Gene and Paul worked in tandem to assert their authority over me and Ace. They always claimed that they encouraged Ace and me to contribute songs or to sing, but they made it clear that there was a true pecking order in the band. Paul was the lead singer, Gene was the second lead, and they would write most of the material. After a while, they threw us a bone and we'd each get a song on an album. But Gene to this day asserts that the doors were always open for Ace and me, but we just didn't deliver. We delivered, they just didn't accept. I was still writing with Stan Penrich, but no matter what I brought to them, it wasn't right for that particular record. Even their collaborations eventually came to an end. I always found that writing with a partner was the best way to write. And Gene and Paul's early Kiss stuff was fantastic. But then the ego set in and they separated as writers, and the songs just weren't as good. Paul started collaborating with other writers like Desmond Child, and he flat out wrote better songs than Gene. As a drummer, I had a lot more fun playing Paul's songs than Gene's. The songwriter and song selection were just one manifestation of the power that Gene and Paul always seemed to want to wield. As their power grew, their egos grew correspondingly. Their egos compelled them to make sure that they were in total control of themselves. That's why the two of them really never got hot. Gene was frightened that he would lose control and do something embarrassing. Paul smoked some pot early on and took a few white crosses, which he used to sneak onto the road, but he also didn't want to blow his cool. They laughed at Ace and me all the time and looked down on us. Ace was just a clown, a space cadet, and I was the hard-edged Italian illiterate. They would have spelling contests to while away the time, they said, but they knew it irritated me because I wasn't as literate as they were. We all knew it, so why do it if you're going to hurt one of your buddies, one of your band members? Gene would say, Ace, spell predicament. Ace would reply, fuck you, you spell predicament. Then Paul would go, Peter. And I'd say, you know I can't spell well, so you have to remind me of that. You don't think that hurts, motherfuckers. And they'd go, Peter, it's only a game. It was a game. The let's fuck with Peter's brain game. The only way I knew how to respond to them was to be brutal. And my own monster would come out and I threatened. That's all I had in my arsenal. I didn't have the words to put them down.